Welcome back to the second part of the lesson, Simple Model Construction of Snowman. So we're building a snowman, and we built the body and the top hat, and next we want to build the arms. So we're going to build the arms out of long, narrow cylinders. If you look here, essentially what we'll do is we'll make each of these segments a cylinder. So there'll be a cylinder here for the main branch, and then some cylinders that will come off of that will create from a duplicate of the cylinder. So back in Maya, we're going to create the cylinder in the side view. So we're going to set the base of it in the side view. That way the cylinder that we make, the branch, will be in the orientation that we need, and we don't have to worry about rotating. So we're going to select the cylinder, and I'm just going to click and drag in the side view to make a very small, very small base. I don't want it to be wide. I want it to be pretty narrow, so something like that. And then in the side, or top view rather, here I'm just going to pull out. Okay. So I've created that little bit. If I think it's too wide, and I think it is a little wide, I can go over here and adjust the radius. So maybe I'll make the radius 0.2. So that's what we are done for that. We're going to move the cylinder to beside the snowman, and then I want to take this pivot point and I want to move it to the end here, so that when I create these branches, they'll be able to spin based off of their root position. So I won't have to, they won't rotate from the middle, but they'll rotate from the end here. So I can rotate them easily into position. So again, it doesn't matter whether I'm in move, rotate, or scale. I'm going to press the D key, and I'm just going to press the red arrow here, and I'm just going to bring the pivot point back to the end, like that. And then I'll press the D key again. So now when I rotate, it rotates from that end. When I duplicate these, the duplicates will also rotate from that end. So I won't have to rotate and move quite so much. So now I'm just going to simply duplicate this, and I'm going to scale it in pretty much all directions down. And then I'll move it over to the end here, and I'll just kind of position it randomly like that. Maybe make it a little smaller, a little shorter. This also one may be a little bit long. It's a little bit long, so I'm going to shorten it, which may necessitate that I bring this second branch back. I can duplicate either one of these right now. I'm going to duplicate the second cylinder that I made as my second branch. So I'm going to go duplicate, and I'll rotate it into another position, direction, and maybe make this one a little smaller. And you just randomly put yours wherever you think. Do 2 or 3. I'll duplicate this one, and I'll move it up to this branch, rotate it, and maybe shrink it even a little bit more. Oh, I'm not quite on it. That's why you check all the views. Something like that. Notice I'm zooming in, moving around. and rotating the views, looking in all of the views to align these, to make sure that they actually align to each other. So once I have these cylinders placed and made where I want them, I actually want all of this to be a combined object, because the cylinders by themselves are kind of useless, but all together they're going to replicate kind of a branch. So I'm just going to hold the shift key down, and I'm just going to click on all of the branches, and then I'm going to go back up to my combine. And when I combine it, it puts the pivot point once again in the center of the object. This is the center, even though it's not on the object. It's the average position of all of the vertices. So that's where it is. So even though it's off all parts of the object, it's considered the center. I want to move it back where it was, back here. So I'm going to once again press the D key. And now I'm just going to move it down with the green arrow, and then I'll move it back with the red arrow. And I notice that I also need to move it back in the Z direction over here. So again, make sure you're looking in all views at this point. And then D again. Okay. I'm going to move it into position inside the body here a little bit, and where I want it. Now I want to make a duplicate. I want to take this, and I don't want to rebuild another one on the other side. I just want to duplicate this one so that it's on the other side. It's flipped. So there's a couple ways to do this. I'm going to do this using the duplicate special. So I'm going to select my branch, and I'm going to duplicate special, which is also edit duplicate special. Whoops. Undo, Control Z. Let me go to the options. Edit, duplicate special, options. Okay. Let me reset these options, because I was doing something else prior to this, and you can see that my settings have changed. Maya remembered what I did in another scene. So I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm going to reset the settings. That sets it back to the default settings. So let me explain this. Up at the top here, just leave it as it is for right now. It just determines how it makes a copy. Don't worry about any of these. That's not the important part. This part in the middle here is. And basically what you're looking at is X, Y, and Z. So the first column is X, second column is Y, the third column is Z. So it's asking you what you want to do with these. So what I was doing before was rotating. I was rotating 10 copies, because I can have multiple copies, and I was rotating them 36 degrees. Of course, 36 times 10 would be 360. So I was making something that would rotate around its pivot point 360 degrees. So that's why you got that kind of all of them in a circle there. This is the pivot point. I don't want that. All I want to do is flip it to the other side. So I only need one copy. I'm only making the other side. And I'm going to flip it around the x-axis. So the easiest way to do that is just either put a -1 here and duplicate. There you go. The drawback of this is that your X scale is -1. So if you go to scale things, it can lead to issues. It won't probably, but certainly if you're animating, it's separately. If it's animating as part of a snowman, don't worry about it. So, but just be aware that this becomes -1 because you flipped it, -1. Let's undo that. Oops. I'm still typing in there. There we go. So undo all that. I'm going to go back and type 1 into my scale. I can also rotate this around the axis. This is my z-axis. It's pointing towards me. So this is my z direction. If I rotate this 180, right, and then duplicate special, now I have the same thing. It's just upside down, right? It's a 180 of that. So either way, under duplicate special, you can make a duplicate of the object in a different position, scale, rotation, and you can make multiple copies. So if I wanted to make multiple copies, I could copy as many times as I want. So that's the essence of the duplicate special. The other part that you can duplicate is if your object has animation attached to it. It can be duplicated here by duplicate input connections. So it disengages this part of the grid, but it will allow you to copy the object along with the animation. And other things like that, if it had special code attached to it and things. Okay. All right, so now we have 2 arms. I'm actually going to reposition and rotate both of them so they're a little bit more interesting. So I'll do my duplicate first. Just kind of rotate them in all directions to kind of randomize it a little bit more, make it different. And then I'll select the selection arrow up here and the other, and I'll rotate that maybe just a little bit. Right, just to kind of reposition a little bit. So there we have the arms for our object. At this point, we've done a major change. I'm actually going to save this scene, but specifically, I'm going to increment and save. So I'm going to go to File, Increment, and Save, and that will save Snowman 2, 0002, you can see up here. Okay. Remember, and I didn't mention this, but remember here, if you are new to this project, you're going to have to do a File, Set Project, and find where you put your project, right, wherever you put your Snowman project, and select it. So here's my Snowman project on the desktop. So you can tell if it's set because it'll show up here. It'll give you that path. Sorry, I should have told you that at the beginning. All right, so now that we've saved and hopefully set the project path, I will put that in the directions, written directions, to the link from this to this part of the video. So at this point, I'm going to do something really simple. I'm going to make a cone, and I'm going to stick it in the middle of his head here. So I'm going to take this cone here that I have, and I'm going to do it the base from the front because I want the point to stick out towards me. So I'm going to select the cone. I'm going to go to the base in the front, and then I'll pull out in the top to make the cone. And then I'll just simply stick it inside on his face and about the middle. And if I think it's not the right size, it's too long, I can scale it back a little bit. I might want to move the pivot point to the end again, to the back here, right? Just like I did before, so it rotates from the bottom, the base. So once again, the D key, I'm going to click the blue arrow, I'm going to drag it back to the base, and then press the D key again. Now, when I push it in, I'm also going to rotate it down slightly, and maybe to one side. I'm going to do another increment and save. Actually, I see I'm a little stuck out here, so I'm actually going to move it down a little bit, and then I'll do a save scene. I don't need to increment and save because I just made that small adjustment. All right, so now I want to do the eyes. Okay, I want to make the eyes. And I want them to stick directly onto the head and be at this angle, this orientation here. So I'm going to make a sphere. I'm going to start by pulling it or creating it in the front view here. And then I'm going to scale it in the Z direction to be pretty flat. I'm also going to reduce the number of faces in it so it's less smooth and round, not like this. So I'm going to select my sphere, and I'm just going to click and drag from the front to make a little sphere. Okay. Then I'm going to go to the channel box where it says inputs, and if I don't see it, then I'll click on the word Polysphere 2, this one here, and this will bring up my my inputs. So I'm going to lower the subdivision axis to 5, and I'm going to lower the subdivision height to 5. So what that did is it made less faces. It made less divisions going around. That's the axis, subdivision axis. And from top to bottom, that's the height. Right? If I made this, say, 10, it would change the number of edges. It would make it rounder along the front to back, but still around the axis it would be lesser. It would be 5. But I'm going to make both of these 5. I want to make it kind of faceted. Then I'm going to take the scale tool and I'm going to scale it in the Z direction until it's kind of flat. Now I want to stick it onto the head. So I want to use a tool that's called Snap to Vertex. And what that will do is it will take my pivot point of my my little eye, and I can snap it to any vertex that is on any other model, so in the scene. So it's kind of hard to see the vertices when it's this gray color. So I do. I'm going to change our viewport. I'm going to change them in the front, in the side, in the perspective, and I'm going to change them the same way. So what I'm going to do is, starting with the front, I'm going to go up here to these little icons at the top of the panel, and I'm going to find the icon that is right here called Wireframe on Shaded. It's right next to a little icon that's a checkered ball, right next to the blue one that has this its smooth face. It's this one called Wireframe on Shaded. So I'm just going to click on that. And what that does is it just makes visible the wireframe view. The wireframe view looks like this, if you look at it. I just did that to the side view here. That's this first icon. You can use this, but it's confusing because the ones in the front and the back are equally visible. So I usually keep it gray and then use this wireframe on shaded. And I'm going to do that also up here into the perspective view. I'm going to zoom in a little bit in all these views. And then I'm just going to go up here to the magnets. And I'm going to find the middle magnet, the magnet that has a magnet next to a point. And I'm going to click on that. And that is also active if I press the V key. If I just press and hold the V key, you can see down here it's continuing on. That activates by keyboard until I release the V key. Okay, So I could do it either way. I'm just going to go up here and click on snap to point. And then I'm just going to drag this till I see it right about here. And so I'm just going to take it and drag it. And you'll notice now I'm kind of clicking. Where am I? Here we go. That's why you have to do it in all directions. I was, I'm looking in these, I'm rotating. I want to click it right there. I'm going to rotate it now so it just lays on the surface a little better. Right, so it lays at that same angle, so I'm just going to rotate it. And I'm going to make it a little larger. Right? Make it larger. I don't want to make it larger in this direction, just in the Y and the X. So I'm going to click on this blue rectangle, and I'll make it larger. And now that I look at it, I think I reduced the amount of subdivisions around the axis. So I'm going to go back to my inputs, and I'm going to find the subdivision axes, and I'm going to make this 10. Like that. Let's make it 8. That looks better. Something like that. I want to make it round, but not real round, maybe 8 or 7. Sometimes making it an odd number is a little more interesting. Something like that. It was just a little too flat, a little too. All right, so I notice, and this is a great learning lesson, I moved and did stuff to this thing, to this shape, the eye, and I could still go back and change it. Change the subdivision. I could even change the radius if I wanted to. I'm going to make a duplicate. And then I'm going to take and activate the move tool. I'm just going to move it to the other side. And I will rotate into the other direction until it lies on that. And it might be more interesting if I kind of offset this a little bit. Kind of have a weird lumpy snowman. I'll just leave it. All right, so now I'm going to duplicate again, and I'm just going to put 3 down here for the mouth. The duplicate here will be smaller, so I'm going to move it, scale it, rotate it, and put 3 of them down here for the mouth. So duplicate, move it down here. I'm going to rotate it into position. I'm going to scale in the Y and the X. So I'm going to click on this little blue rectangle, and I'll make it about that big. I'll duplicate it again. I'll move it over. Zoom in a little bit. See, I'm not at the same angle. Go. Select the middle one. Duplicate again. Bring it over to the other side. Rotate it into position. I'm also going to do the same thing with the button. So I'm going to duplicate this middle one, and I'll put maybe 3 or 4 buttons in the middle here. Okay, so that will be our buttons. So I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to move it down here. There it is. Down there. Rotate. Duplicate. stubborn. Move to this position. There we go. Sometimes it gets a little hinky. Not sure why it won't go to this. There we go. All right, rotate it into position. I think you can get the idea here. We're just going to do 2 more. And I'll duplicate again. Okay. I could separate these a little bit better, huh? I could probably make these down a little bit. And put them on every other one. Like that. Of course, I'm a little bit off here. Oops. There we go. I'm going to show you a trick. So if I want to recenter all of these so that I see the whole snowman in all 4 views, I'm going to press Shift and F. Oh, so it centered on my selected object. I didn't realize I still had this selected. So that tells you that if I pull Shift and F, it will center the camera view in all views to the selected object. If I have nothing selected, if I just click out here into no space, and then I press Shift F, it takes the whole scene. It will center and frame the whole scene. Just so that you know, if one is like this and you want to get centered back again in this view, just press F, no Shift, and you're back in a single view. We can turn off all these wireframe non-shaded. Don't need these any longer. And that's pretty much the snowman. You know, I was going to do the pipe. If you guys want to add it, figure out how to add a pipe. It's basically 2 cylinders, kind of very similar to the way we made the arms. So this, with the first part that we did in class, completes the first lesson. So let's go ahead and do a final increment and save.